morning.
Good morning, Rabbi Yossi. Good morning.
Nice to see you all, or if I don't see you, I see your names. So welcome. You know, right now we're all unmuted, unless you're actually, if you want, you could unmute yourselves. If it gets too noisy, if you know the noise is coming, you know, from or outside your condo, you can mute yourself back. You know, if it's not working, we could change it. But our topic is open, you know, for participation. So you can leave yourselves unmuted at your discretion. Most of you are muted now. So I won't unmute you, but you can unmute yourselves. So welcome to the inaugural session of Parsha in 20. You know, in slang Jewish talk, we often say to somebody, oh, he's in the Parsha, meaning like he's connected to what's going on, the topic of the day, of the situation. Of course, for us, the literal meaning of the Parsha means the weekly portion. Or other times it means a small topic within any portion that we might be looking at. Like a particular story within a bigger Parsha is also called a Parsha. It's a smaller Parsha. Anyhow, the goal of Parsha in 20 is to give us something to think about on the Parsha, maybe to talk about on Shabbos, even before Shabbos, and fill more of our time with Torah. I'm going to begin by reciting something that you're familiar with. And when I stop, I welcome you to tell me what the next word will be. So here goes. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu.
The mitzvah.
You are unanimous, but it's not what I had in mind. You 99.9% of the time, you would all have been right. But I chose a notable exception. The exception actually emanates from last week's Parsha, and I'll tell you soon why I'm going to refer back to last week's Parsha. But the exception is the bracha, the blessing that the Kohanim make on the blessing. You know, it's a mitzvah to do Birkas Kohanim. Unfortunately, most of us, maybe all of us, haven't heard that in a while, since the Ashkenazi custom is only to do it on Yantiv, and the last couple of Yantivs, we haven't been in shul to hear duchening. But when the Kohanim on a Yantiv will duchen, first they make a bracha. So it's a bracha on the bracha that they are giving as a conduit from Hashem. And that bracha goes, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'kiddushato shel Aharon, with the sanctification of Aaron. Vitzivanu, now we know that word. Vitzivanu levarech, we know that word also, to bless. We have, and he commanded us to bless it Amo Yisrael bi'ahava, to bless his nation with love. In other words, as they're reciting those three brachas, that the Kohanim should feel love to everybody that they're blessing. But this is a very unique bracha, because it drops the word b'mitzvotav. B'mitzvotav means in his commandments. Who's the his? Hashem. So we're actually dropping one of the references to God in a bracha, and we are substituting it with a reference to a certain holiness, sanctification that Aharon, the high priest, had. It's an amazing thing. If I have a feeling, even before I paid attention to this, which means this week, if someone would have told me without using any names, and I didn't recognize them as a Jewish person, and they were talking, I would think that they're going to start concepts of other religions, talking about the sanctification, making a blessing, referring to the sanctification that a human being has, at the expense of dropping that word, b'mitzvotav. So that's our opening question. Why do we drop that reference to God? I mean, God is referred to in the bracha, but one of the references is dropped. Question number 2 is why do we replace it with the reference to Aharon? And I think that as we feel more comfortable with answering that question, it will help us to understand another question, a famous question, which is brought up at the beginning of this week's Parsha of Bahaloscha. So first, let me share with you some thoughts of Rabbi Soloveitchik connected to our topic. Rabbi Soloveitchik said that when it comes to the Kohanim, the priests, and let's just put it in the context when there is a Mishkan, the desert tabernacle, or other tabernacle, or the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple in Yerushalayim. Not that it's limited to that, just that some of the examples would play out, more when we have a Beit HaMikdash, but that there are 2 different types of sanctification. One is Kiddushat Kihuna, the sanctification of the priesthood, of being a Kohen. And the second, you might be able to guess it, is Kiddushat Aharon, the sanctification that comes about from being a direct descendant of Aharon, the first Kohen. Reb Soloveitchik applied it, saying that when a Kohen today takes the 5 silver coins from the father of his first child, who and happens to be the male, a male child who's firstborn. So when the Kohen helps that pidyon haben, the redemption of the firstborn, that he is functioning with the Kiddushat Kihuna, with the sanctification of being a Kohen. But when the Kohen is doing the avoda, the worship service in the Beit HaMikdash, or in its forerunner, in the tabernacle, the Mishkan, in the desert, so that is actually being done with Kiddushat Aharon, the sanctification that somehow originated with Aaron, the first Kohen and the first high priest. In fact, in the Nusach Sfad version of the Yom Kippur description of the Yom Kippur special worship service, the Machzer includes a reference that every Kohen Gadol, a high priest, on Yom Kippur, he had to prepare intensely for his encounter in the temple, in the Mishkan on Yom Kippur. It would also be the only time during the year that the Kohen, not just any Kohen, but only the Kohen Gadol, would be allowed to enter the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies. And that, you have to prepare for that in and of itself. That is an awesome, really meaning it in the core root, having awe, has to be an awesome experience. And the Sanhedrin would instruct the Kohen of the day, way after Aaron the priest left this world, that the Sanhedrin would tell the high priest, you are serving Bimkom Aharon. You are the substitute, the delegate for Aaron, the first high priest. So there is a kedusha, a sanctification of Aharon, one of the two sanctifications specifically held by the Kohanim. So we see from this development, hopefully, that the very existence and the functioning of the Beit HaMikdash, or its forerunner, the Mishkan, were integrally connected to Aaron, Aharon, the Kohen Gadol. And with this, we can better understand a famous question which is cited by Rashi. He didn't create the question. The Medrash already has the question, but it is Rashi's first comment on this week's Parsha. And I'm going to give you a drop of background information. I'll tell you what, I'll tell you the question first. The question is, what is the connection of the opening mitzvah in this week's Parsha, which is Bahaloscha, where the Parsha opens, Hashem spoke to Moshe that Moshe should speak to Aaron, and he should tell Aaron, Bahalotcha et hanerot, when you go up to light the candles, or ultimately when you make the candles go up, he goes on to say how you should be facing the menorah and how you should go about doing the lighting of the menorah. So the opening mitzvah of this Parsha is the lighting of the menorah, ostensibly and by pshat, plain meaning, in the Beit HaMikdash, in the tabernacle. And Rashi cites the Medrash Tanchuma asking, what is the connection between this topic and last week's final topic? Last week's final topic was a very long section on the gifts that the Nesiim, the presidents of the tribes, I almost said all tribes, but that wouldn't be totally accurate, as we'll see in a moment, but the presidents of the 12 tribes brought, as part of the dedication service, each president on a separate day. And Rashi cites that question, what's the connection of the menorah to the gifts of the presidents? Rashi does not always ask this question. There are always things that are connected in the Torah. So many of the commentators do say that one of Rashi's rules of when he asked this question of Lama Nismecha, why is this mini portion, this story, connected to the last story, that Rashi only asked that when one of them at least is out of chronological order. So let's just think for a moment. Where are we in the Chumash? If we look ahead to next week's Parsha, we're about to enter the land of Israel. And this is in the second year post the Exodus. You may know, I don't want to ruin the plot for you in case you haven't read next week's Parsha yet, but our attempt to follow through with Plan A and enter the land of Israel fell apart because of the spies. That's next week's story, which creates a 38-year gap, basically, in our detailed history. And last week's Parsha is the dedication of the Mishkan. But the dedication of the Mishkan goes back 2 more books of the Torah, because we're given the mitzvah of constructing the Mishkan, the tabernacle, in the middle of Sefer Shmos, the book of Exodus. And then we're told, after all the commands of what needs to be brought, then we're told the people responded and brought, so that the end of Sefer Shmos ends with us having a tabernacle. So in other words, when did the presidents bring their gifts to the Mishkan? Really back in Sefer Shmos, which is okay because Vayikra is going back to the whole story of the tabernacle also. But But in the story of the tabernacle, once the tabernacle was constructed, what's the chronology? So I'll tell you. The first 7 days after the Mishkan was constructed, Moshe was the temporary Kohen Gadol. And he went through all of the services that needed to go to, and he trained the Kohanim, particularly Aaron, the head of the Kohanim. On day 8, the Kohanim take over. And then the presidents, the Nesiim, begin a 12-day process. That's from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That's the 8th day. So from day 1 through day 12, the presidents brought their korbanot. But it would appear, I'm more sensitive to it now, that Aharon first lit the menorah, and then the presidents started to bring their korbanot. So even though the fact that in the 4th book of the Torah, we're still talking about the construction of the way, because it's the dedication of the Mishkan right after it was built, we're still talking about it, but it would appear that that this week's opening story happened before, even though just before, last week's concluding stories. So that's the history behind the question that Rashi raises in the name of the Tanchuma Medrash as to why are these parshas connected. And the answer that is given is when Aharon saw that a president of every tribe was bringing gifts and offerings to the Mishkan, Chalsha az da'ato. At that time, his frame of mind was weakened. He became depressed. Why? Shelo haya imahem b'Chanukah. We call the dedication of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, is called Chanukat HaMizbeach. It focuses on the altar and the Chanukah, which we know from a different holiday, but is dedication. Still when someone moves into a new house, a new condo, sometimes they make a little gathering, and they call it a Chanukat HaBayit. It's the dedication of the house. It doesn't mean they went to war. Maybe they had a potential buyer's war, with the price, but they won. But it really means dedication. There's a dedication of the new house. The dedication of the tabernacle focuses on the dedication of the Mizbeach and the actions that would take place on that altar. So Aharon became depressed because he was not part of that. Not he and not his tribe. That's what I alluded to before. The 12 tribes, the presidents of each of the 12 tribes were represented in this dedication service. But there is another tribe. There was the tribe of Levi, who were split into people who functioned as Leviim, the Levites, and as the Kohanim. But they weren't part of the tribes to get land in Eretz Yisrael. So of the tribes, it was only the tribe of the Leviim and the Kohanim, one family really, who were excluded from this aspect of sanctifying, dedicating the Mishkan. And Aaron became depressed. And Hashem told Moshe, you need to talk to Aharon, and you need to tell him that your role is greater than anybody else's role, because you light the menorah and you make those flames burn strong and keep on burning. The Ramban, Nachmanides, cites Rashi with great respect, but he says, I don't really get it. Of all the mitzvahs that Hashem could have identified, why did he identify the menorah? Identify what I just shared with you before, that Aharon was the only person and his descendants would be the only people that would be allowed to go into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies. Mention that, or mention the korbanot that he brought. And all through, he was involved with Moshe in the sanctification. He was involved. There are other things that could be compensation. Why just the lighting of the menorah, which in truth was not restricted to the Kohen Gadol. Any Kohen could light the menorah. yes, only the Kohen Gadol can go into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies. And Aaron took it upon himself to light the menorah, but any Kohen could have lit the menorah. So certainly that Kodesh HaKodeshim might have been a better example. And so says the Ramban that, you know what Hashem was telling Moshe to tell to Aharon? Is that Aharon, there's going to be another Hanukkah, another Chanukah Tabayit, that when you many generations down the road, when our Beit HaMikdash was defiled, and it would be rededicated. It would be rededicated by the Hashmonaim, who were the Kohanim. They were the priestly family. And that menorah is not even dependent upon a functioning Beit HaMikdash. We know that we have our own Hanukkah menorah. Every generation of Jews has a menorah. And that was Aaron's compensation to the Ramban to know that mitzvah would always be present, even when a Mishkan or a Beit HaMikdash would not be present, would not be functioning. I'd just like to add to the Ramban in terms of concluding, because I still, grappled a little bit with what is the connection really between lighting the menorah and the menorah of Hanukkah with uplifting Aaron's spirits. It's true, it's going to be mitzvahs every generation, but I think there's more to that. I think what happened at the dedication of the Mishkan, of which we're connected to last week and this week in the Torah reading, is that Aharon learned a big lesson, and his children learned that lesson. They passed that lesson down the line, that sometimes there is something positive of being in isolation from what the other people are doing. I didn't pick this thought just because of the word isolation. I realized afterwards it just happens to really fit in. But, particularly, it's necessary when the flow of events is not going in a Torah way. People must isolate themselves from that flow, unless they're able to impact it, in a positive way, but they can't go with the flow. They have to be willing to stand on the sidelines sometime. And it was Aharon's descendants, the Hashmonaim, leading up to the Hanukkah story, who learned that lesson also, and who had that courage to go with a different flow, where most of the Jews were interested in business, developing the relationship with the Greco-Syrian Empire, building the trade, the export, the import. That was driven by money, by and large, and they were willing to sell mitzvahs, give up mitzvahs because of money. And the Kohanim separated themselves from that. Others did also, but these Kohanim then took the active role of turning around that situation. And some of us might be Kohanim, and most of us are not. But the lesson is one that we should learn as well. And maybe we pick up a lesson from our own isolation, limitation that we've experienced in different degrees over the last few months, and make sure that we make it into a good trait, that when we need to be separate, we will be separate. And when we need to take action, we will take action. And when we need to bring more light to the world, and Bahalotcha, that the command was to make sure that you stick with the flames until the flames are independent and will burn nicely and continue to burn, that you stay with it until the fire is really burning and you make your impression. May we all make a great impression and bring more light to the world. Thank you for joining with me. I apologize for going over 5 minutes, but you should have a wonderful day. I'm going to unmute.
Oh, Rabbi?
Yes.
Are we going to have a live service tomorrow night for Friday night service?
Well, the answer, not yet determined, but most likely yes. in one or more places. You have to stay tuned today. There are developments happening with our minyanim. So they may make it into the bulletin, they may not. But
Okay.
even if it do, believe that there will be a follow-up email. So do watch your emails for possible new opportunities of minions over Shabbos.
Okay,
So,
thank you so much.
special Shabbos accommodation. So most of you are unmuted. If you have anything to say to one another, if you have any questions that you want to raise, you may.
Are there any other teachers going to be giving classes?
Can you say that again, Susan?
Are there any other teachers going to give classes?
If you check the bulletin, we have some classes that are being given by people from the shul, and they are listed in the bulletin, both on the calendar page and
Well,
inside the bulletin.
I'm in New York. I'll call the office.
Well, you can get our bulletin online. If you're not getting it in your email, you can go to torahorboca.org and look for the bulletin. You'll get that information. Sure. Okay. I wish you all. Yes, somebody else?
I really liked it. I enjoyed it as a bus Kohen. I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Me too, Bat Cohen. Put it there, Marcia.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Bat Kohen,
bus Kohen.
and you both have connection to rabbis. Love it.
Right, and I married a lady, so I'm double blessed. Double blessed.
Connecticut.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay,
All right. Have a good day,
Thank you, Rabbi
everybody.
all
Yossi.
right, bye-bye.
That's a Kohen. That's a Kohen.
And,
Very well
and,
done.
and have a Shabbat Shalom.
Bye. Have a
too.
good
I
Shabbos,
really enjoyed it.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Rebecca.
Bye, Ram 9, Mrs. Yasger.
Bye-bye.